All right, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for hopping on. We've still got quite a few people hopping on, so I'm going to give it just another moment or two, and then we'll get rolling. All right, looks like the people jumping in has mellowed out a little bit. Still a few joining. Um, Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where in the world you are. I'm Sadie. I lead up the go-to-market efforts here at We Connect. Thank you for joining us today. I know you have lots of options on how to spend your time, but today we're going to talk about how to stop just random acts of prospecting and start engineering intentional pipeline. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start off with. The chat is open. If you have questions, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We will be saving questions for the end. Today's event is being recorded, and we'll send out a recording within 24 to 48 hours after the event, whenever it's ready. And like I said, please feel free to drop your questions when they come up, but we will hold them for the end. And then if you have any problems, please feel free to send a chat with to hosts and panelists, any technical issues that we can help with, and we will do our best to give you a hand. So actually, the first thing I'd like to do today is just ask a little bit about what your experience is with LinkedIn and how active you are. So I'm going to launch a poll really quickly. It just gives me a sense and all of us a sense of who we're talking to on the phone so that we can tailor our message a little bit. So if you would respond to the poll, I'll leave it up for just a moment or two. Um, Oh, already getting people responding. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just let us know what your primary purpose for using LinkedIn, because again, it helps us kind of tailor the conversation today. And then how active are you on LinkedIn, right? Are you there just once in a while or kind of just browsing? Are you actively engaged on a daily or weekly basis? Where do you fall on that spectrum? About 60% of people have answered. Thank you. So we'll give it just another minute for a few more people to respond. And by the way, no surprises. We're at just under 60% are primarily prospecting or generating leads on LinkedIn. About a third are networking and relationship building, and then a smattering of other things. So, not really a surprise when this is more of a lead generation focused webinar, right? In terms of how active are you, about 55% of you are very active or daily. 35% are moderately active a few times a week, and then a smattering of others, including about 6% who are rarely active and almost never use it, which thanks for hopping on. Hopefully we can change your mind about how active you are on LinkedIn during today's event. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Thanks for giving us just a little bit more information to help us tailor our message for today. All right. So let's hop on here. I wanted to talk to start with, I'm going to skip some of the basics of LinkedIn because, again, most of you have just told us that you're pretty actively on LinkedIn. But just a reminder, the power of LinkedIn, there's 200 million accounts in the US on LinkedIn. By the way, I'm not sure how that math works when we've got, 330 million or so people in the US, but hey, lots of people on LinkedIn. And moreover, lots of data in LinkedIn that you can't get anywhere else in terms of people's current job roles and responsibilities, their past job titles, et cetera, their colleagues, who they're connected to. There are lots of reasons why LinkedIn continues to be one of the most valuable sources, especially for business to business type of activities, but sometimes B2C as well, right? But what happens right now, what I see all the time is that people are using LinkedIn manually and it's kind of ad hoc, right? I've been running sales teams in mostly technology companies for many, many years. And for the most part, we didn't have a whole lot of an idea of what our sales teams were doing on LinkedIn. We would ask them, and maybe we gave them templates occasionally, right? But the reality is everyone was doing it a little bit differently, and outreach was inconsistent. Maybe they did or did not notice when, a great prospect would comment on a post of ours or, like a post, share a post, whatever. There are certainly signals that we can pick up on in LinkedIn. And frankly, most teams aren't doing this in a an intentional and sustainable kind of way. So we'll talk about that a lot today. And then follow up, right? Maybe they're checking LinkedIn once or twice a week. That's not all that uncommon. Even if they're doing it daily, are your sales reps maybe scheduling intentional follow-ups? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, right? How does that look? Is it consistent? And worse, from a sales or marketing or RevOps type of leadership perspective, because you can't really see what's working, you can't improve it, right? Which is something that drives me nuts. In every other aspect of sales and outreach, we can see it in the CRM, we can see emails, we can see what's going on, but we can't improve something that we can't even track. And that's the reality with most LinkedIn outreach right now for most teams. And so, they may actually be spending a ton of time on LinkedIn, but unless you have some structure, there's kind of random, it doesn't consistently drive pipeline. So maybe it's a lead here or there. By the way, when there is a lead, maybe it has to be manually entered into the CRM, right? Lots of reasons why there's potential there that's not necessarily getting captured currently. All right. And the problem with this is that it's costing you deals, that there are absolutely buying signals and intent that's happening and being revealed on LinkedIn that your team isn't picking up on, right? And so you may have SDRs who are spending a ton of time on LinkedIn, or a sales team themselves spending a ton of time on LinkedIn, doing a ton of manual outreach, but maybe no one's specifically following up on this particular type of intent signal, right? Maybe again, it's not that consistent because it's not able to be scheduled. If you're, using something like SalesLoft and scheduling out your email and call cadences, are you also scheduling out your LinkedIn cadences? In most cases, what I see is the answer is no. So you've got, kind of a hit or miss outreach that just doesn't lead to a predictable revenue driver or lead generation tool. Is interesting actually. So early last year, we did a survey among primarily WeConnect customers and asked them how important LinkedIn was in their lead generation efforts. And the people who consistently posted and engaged in LinkedIn at least once a week, almost all of them, I think it was like 68%, but don't hold me to that because it's been a little while. But more than two-thirds stated that LinkedIn was in their top three lead generation sources. And that was actually really a surprise to me because honestly, I haven't been in an environment previously where LinkedIn was that high up in the priority list, right? And it also tells me how important LinkedIn continues to be. The other thing that was surprising about that tool or about that poll is that people also said that they expected LinkedIn to become even more important in the next year, not less, because I hear that a lot too. I hear people talk about, well, LinkedIn used to work, but it doesn't work anymore. I would argue it still works, but maybe you have to go about it differently and be a little more intentional and not, by the way, just let AI kind of run roughshod through your outreach. So we'll talk about that today as well. But yeah, especially as you start to scale your sales team, right? It might be okay if you have kind of inconsistent outreach with one or two or three sales team members, but as you start to scale, these inefficiencies, this unpredictability becomes really, really obvious and frankly becomes a big problem, especially in an environment where LinkedIn can be one of those top sources of leads, right? And so how do we really kind of harness that and turn it into a predictable pipeline model? All right. So for us at WeConnect, we have for many, many years provided the tools to automate some of your LinkedIn outreach. And obviously, we think that that means when you can automate, you can make it more consistent and you can more consistently drive pipeline. However, we haven't talked a whole lot about capturing buying signals from LinkedIn. We've talked more about how do you do outreach? How do you consistently reach the right people? And by the way, that's still a super important part of your efforts, right? Is that proactive outreach and outbound? But how do you identify meaningful buying signals? How are you capturing that? So what does that look like? The triggers could be people who are commenting on a particular type of post, whether, by the way, it could be your post, it could be a competitor's post, it could be an upcoming event post, whether or not you're going to be at that event, right? If your target is, sales professionals and there's a huge, or I'll use SaaStr as an example. If you're targeting SaaS founders and you've got a big event coming up, whether or not you're actually going to be at that event, Are you targeting some of those people that are giving signals that they're going to be at that event, right? They may be following the event itself on LinkedIn. They are liking or sharing or commenting on a post about the upcoming event. All of this stuff, there's lots of signals that we can pick up on and be more intentional about leveraging in our outreach that, frankly, we're not doing typically. Most of what I see is outreach that is based on your ICP, your ideal customer profile, right? So maybe you're going into Sales Navigator and you're pulling a list of the right types of companies in the right industries, the right titles, the right size, all of that good stuff. And you're just doing consistent outreach to those people that totally disregards whether or not they're in a buying cycle currently and whether or not they are giving any sort of signal that they might be interested in something you have to offer. So we want to start talking about this a little bit more, about capturing some of those signals, organizing them into campaigns and being really intentional about that based on the triggers, and then applying a structured outreach, right? Again, you're doing the same thing that you might have done with an imported list or a list from your CRM or a list from your Sales Navigator search, but you're doing it in response to a buying signal or a response to an interest signal so that you're much more effective. And then obviously you want to do this consistently so it's not just a one-off. Although, by the way, everything we're going to talk about today could be done manually, could be done on an automatic way in other ways, or could be done, of course, with WeConnect. And so I think this is something to think about whether or not you ever use LinkedIn automation, whether or not you're currently using an automation tool, is how do we capture those signals? Are we being intentional about that? Do we have someone on the team who's actually assigned to capture some of those signals and actively doing so week in and week out to make sure that we're in the right place at the right time? And sometimes what I see is you've got like a social media manager on the marketing team or something like that who maybe is responsible for that. Maybe that's the right answer. Maybe it's not, because are they thinking about intent signals, or are they more just managing, the posts and responding to comments and things like that? Or maybe they're not looking for people who are kind of raising their hand and saying, hey, I might be interested in a tool like yours among competitors' posts, for example, right? So there are absolutely ways I think that sales teams can start to capture those intent signals, whether or not they do it in an automated way. All right, so what types of examples would we be looking at in terms of that? Thank you, guys. By the way, I see some questions coming in. A reminder to go ahead and drop them in the Q&A or in the webinar chat, and we will get to you. By the way, if we don't get to your questions at the end because we run out of time, or because it's a more complicated question, we will follow up via email as well. All right, so what are some examples of that type of signal-driven outreach that I'm talking about? Well, that could look like a lot of things, and we already talked a little bit about competitor post engagement. When one of your competitors is launching a new product or commenting with best practices or thought leadership, anybody who's interested in your topic might be following or reacting, engaging with a competitor's post. So that could be an intent signal, right? That they're somehow in market. Industry event participants, again, can be a great one. A lot of times when people are going to events, they're open to revisiting some of their processes, maybe purchasing different software, different tools, et cetera, right? So industry event participants, again, whether or not you're actually going to be at the event, I think industry events can be a great trigger for you. I've personally helped some of our customers launch campaigns that are based around an upcoming industry event, but they weren't necessarily going to be there. So say you're a member of a group, the group is hosting an upcoming industry event, you're going to miss this one, that's fine. But you start reaching out to other members of the groups, just going, hey, not sure if you're going to be there. I'm sorry to miss it, but I'd love to catch up and just have a chat. And I've seen people book 7 or 10 meetings in a couple of weeks span heading into an event like that, even without actually attending the event. So pre and post event follow-up is a really big deal. It can be a great trigger if people are going to be at events. They're obviously open to best practices, new ideas, all of that good stuff. Job change announcement. I will say this is one that I feel like more people are doing, and maybe some teams are paying for a tool that actually notifies them of, hey, someone in your CRM had a job change, for example. But a lot of people are still missing this one, right? When a job change happens, when someone picks up a new role, it is often the time that they come in and they reevaluate all of the processes, all of the tools that they're using. And, it can be a great time for them to enter into a buying cycle. It also, by the way, depending on your industry and what's going on in your world, it might be an indicator of, oh, it's not a good time. Maybe it's like, when they have a job change announcement, I want to schedule something out for 6 months later to follow up once they've settled in, and then maybe they're going to be ready to talk to me about this type of thing, right? It depends on your situation, but it's a trigger regardless. And if you're not intentionally capturing it, you're probably missing some opportunities. It also, by the way, I mean, if they've updated their profile on LinkedIn that they had a job change, it's also an indicator that they're more actively engaged, right? Where a lot of your people maybe aren't actively engaged on LinkedIn. Content engagement for particular target accounts. This can be a really big one, right? If you have key accounts that some of your sales team members are assigned to, are they following those accounts, those company pages to make sure that they're picking up on anything that's changing at that company? That might be a really great intent signal. Whatever those triggers might be. Could it be a merger or an acquisition? Could be a new product launch? Could be, a big layoff or a big hiring push. There could be a lot of different things um, within your target accounts that could lead to an open opportunity or an open door for you. And then people who comment on thought leadership posts, right? Again, if you're posting about best practices and people are commenting on that, obviously they're open to suggestions, open to maybe doing something differently. So are we being intentional about reaching out at that time to talk to them about that, maybe to provide other resources, right? Lots of opportunities there. Again, all of these are things that you can do, and you can have an intentional person assigned to pay attention to, right? Maybe you have one rep who's consistently assigned to monitor competitor posts and do some outreach around that. Maybe you've got someone else whose job it is to spend a couple of hours a week looking for upcoming industry events and paying attention to LinkedIn and what people are signaling about that when those events are coming up. All right. Before we get into the kind of demo piece of today, and I think the demo is really important because I want to show what some of this looks like in practice. Um, I talk to people all the time who are kind of on either end of the spectrum with regards to AI, right? Some people are like, yep, we're using AI for everything. That's probably the rare example. And other people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want to use AI for anything yet. I'm not there in terms of incorporating it into my actual corporate processes. And I get it. I get it completely. One thing that we've been really intentional about at WeConnect is how can you incorporate AI in a way that feels kind of controlled and very specific to where it's helpful and additive to your process, but it's not taking over, right? And so for me, by the way, I'm a pretty risk averse person. I know I've worked in this industry, and obviously I work with companies that are kind of taking the lead on some of the AI development stuff. But that said, I'm very, very cautious about how I incorporate AI into my workflows. And so one of the things that I want to talk about as we talk about where we're headed with the LinkedIn lead engine and our beta program that's opening up for everybody to try is being more intentional with the use of AI and not just having it. Lots of people are talking about autonomous conversations and can you just unleash it to run your lead flows? I wouldn't be in a place where I was ready to do that at this point, but how can you kind of ease into that? How can you do it in a way that feels a lot more, like I said, a lot more controlled, maybe a lower risk profile at the moment. So it's definitely adding to your workflows. So some examples of ways that we're enabling people now to use AI at WeConnect. Again, that signal identification, right? How are you capturing some of that? And can you do it in an automated way so you don't have to have a rep spending their time on capturing some of that? Segmentation and prioritization. If you're in marketing or RevOps or even sales, you've probably spent a whole bunch of time thinking about how you're scoring leads, right? I've certainly spent a ton of my career working on lead scoring systems to figure out, which leads are worth follow up, which ones maybe aren't, or which ones get more intense follow up or personal follow up as opposed to more automated follow up. those are things that AI can really, really excel in is segmenting like, okay, who's in our ICP or close enough to our ICP that they should be scored really highly, or who's really not, and maybe they get kind of a more minimal follow-up or put into some kind of nurture flows that aren't as intense, right? Versus who maybe gets like personal outreach. Obviously, drafting messages is a pretty obvious use for AI, but no, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, again, unleash it to just respond autonomously all the time. It can mean that you let it draft, but you review before you actually send anything, which, by the way, is where I would start before you're comfortable with fully, letting it just respond for you. And then obviously scheduling, right? You want to be consistent. And again, whether or not you use a tool like WeConnect, set up your reminders, set up your sequence so that you're pinged about next steps automatically. And this is becoming a little bit more intentional, a little bit more systematized and predictable for your team. All right. So that said, what's new and exciting for us here at WeConnect is really leaning in on how we're enabling people to encompass AI into their workflows, but also we realized a while ago last year that our existing campaign builder, which, let you do kind of step one, step two, step three, and we'll look at the existing one here in just a minute, really wasn't supporting all of the things that we wanted people to be able to do with regards to like a full outbound lead engine, right? And so we had this term floating around internally called the orchestrator. It really is. It's like orchestrating your outbound campaigns, which is very different from just, you know, kind of a simple flow step type of process. So it allows you to capture contacts from some of those LinkedIn signals we've been talking about and build campaigns around them. It also allows you to do multi-step outreach across both LinkedIn and email, which we've enabled for quite a while. And scale your campaigns for up to 2,500 contacts at a time. But it also allows you to do more advanced things like plug in AI agents at certain points to evaluate whether a lead is responding positively or negatively and handle it differently depending, right? It allows you to plug in lead scoring in a way that we absolutely couldn't do in the past. It also allows you to move people within campaigns based on their behavior. So maybe, initially they're in one type of campaign, they get to a point where they're giving several buying type signals, and you move them into a different type of campaign to handle them differently. You're maybe working with your integrations and pushing and pulling them to and from your CRM. There are lots of capabilities within the orchestrator, within the LinkedIn lead engine, that are much more advanced and a much more kind of full featured way to handle your outbound than what the campaign builder was in the past. So with that said, I'm going to hand it off to Archie. Archie's part of our account management team, among other things. I think he's worn a whole bunch of hats here at WeConnect over the years. And he's going to help us take a look at the existing WeConnect campaign builder, kind of talk about where we've been. And by the way, this is pretty typical of where a lot of funnel type campaigns are, again, with kind of a step one, step two, step three type of approach, fairly basic and fairly linear, if you will. So Archie, I will stop sharing and let you take it away for a moment.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I assume some of you guys are already using WeConnect for the most part. So these are old setup. So if you were to create a campaign, just simply go onto your campaign manager's page. And then you go on hit to create new campaign. This is what Sadie will be talking about in a little bit, our new option right here on how to create a campaign. But for now, I'll be touching on the old way of creating a campaign, which is what we'll be calling legacy smart sequence now. So as you can see here, for those who are already in eConnect, already know that you guys already done this many times. So you might be familiar with it for now, but for those who are not yet, this is how user-friendly it is. You just go name your campaign, choose a campaign type that you'll be running on. If you already save your save list, you can just choose it from your list and then go ahead and hit continue as I take out the camera probably in there. And now this is the sequence part wherein you put on your messaging strategy, right? For your step one, it will be up to you on what you want to do. You got multiple actions here for your choices. If you want to email them right away, you send free email in their open profile. If you want to invite to connect, it's your decision. You can like a post first to create some engagement before inviting. Let's just for example, for this sake, let's choose invite to connect and then put on your invite message right there. That's an option right here. And then go on to save. And then your next action would be for you to decide what you're going to do if accepted. Now you got another choices of actions that you can choose from. Say this time you want to like a post first so you can make your presence felt. Decide how many days you want it to be done. And then go to the next step. And then now if not accepted, what you want to do. Do you want to visit the profile or like a post or just do nothing? For this sake, they just do nothing and then save it. And then now you got here another step that you want to do. So this time, what if it's accepted? Now you want to go follow up if accepted. How many days from the step that you previously done, which is step two. So let's just say 1 day, you can choose 1 day or even hour. Uh, so now you go next, and then if not accepted, still after 4 days it's not accepted, say you want to like a post again, and then save. So now, and you can go on and on depending on what type of campaign you're running and what your plan and messaging sequence are. So once you've done that, let's go save first, just to make sure that I did, because otherwise I won't be able to. Oh, I can't go blank. Mistake. The system will flag you if you put on a personalization that is not on the correct format. So I'll just take it out just for me to save it and go next. Go save and now go continue. And now you've done your sequence. Now you go to your settings. This is one of our new features that we launched a couple of weeks back. This is our reply settings wherein you can choose to do manual reply Copilot, which means AI will be composing a reply and then wait for you to approve to send it or not. Maybe tweak it a little bit, or fully autonomous, wherein the AI will be talking to your customers or contacts, depending on the info that you'll be feeding to your business snapshot. So that you'll be setting up your business snapshot here on the settings. This will also be very important on the next new format or campaign builder that we'll be introducing in a little bit. So as you can see here, I already created mine. Just put on your business name, what you guys do, what is your goal on the conversation, which the AI will be leading your contact to. If you have a brochure about your product, you can feed it here too, so the AI will have more information about your business. If you have URL of your business, you can put it here. And then your target audience, are you B2B, B2C, startup, and whatnot? And then what kind of product or problem does your product offer to solve for your customers? Are you automating processes? And if this is not on the list, just click on the others and put in on you personal a service that you provide. You can also choose the language that you are going to be using for those non-American. Maybe you'll be using French or Spanish, and also the tone of voice if you want it professional or friendly or optimistic. Now, when you set it up, when you set that up, the system will now have a basis on how your AI will be replying to your contact, and also will be the basis on how the new LinkedIn lead engine will be having on that Sadie will be discussing by now. So I'll be stopping the screen share and let Sadie take over again. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thanks, Archie. And yes, Archie is awesome to whoever commented on that. Archie, you've got some fans apparently in the audience today. I'm not surprised. I think if you've been around WeConnect for any length of time, you probably had the pleasure of interacting with Archie at some point. All right. So let's take a look at what the new LinkedIn lead engine will look like. And I'm going to start up here with your campaign setup open. I've got something in the way already. we're gonna work on an audience. This one will be a LinkedIn post. This one in particular, let's say it's an upcoming event post. And you can add, by the way, multiple posts, right? So if you want to combine multiple posts maybe into a single campaign, you can do that. Um, and you can reach out or you can include people in your campaign who reacted to a post, maybe liked or supported or whatever, who commented or who reposted or all three. And so you have more capabilities for interacting with posts on LinkedIn now than you used to. So you've got some options there. We talked briefly about the business snapshot, and I don't have any saved in mine, but I know Archie just shared this. But this is where you really kind of control what the AI knows about your business. And if you've got multiple businesses, or maybe if you've got multiple goals, let's say sometimes you're running a campaign where your goal is to book a demo, and other times you're running a campaign where your goal is to convince people to take a free trial. You could set up multiple business snapshots for either those different goals or for different businesses so that you can customize by campaign which one the AI is pulling from and how it's treating your audience. So this is pretty powerful. We're continuing to refine and add more capabilities here. And I know Archie did mention you can upload. As a marketing person, this is a big deal, right? Because we've typically got like campaign briefs that talk about who we're targeting and maybe what the messaging is for that particular campaign, what our goals are, what our success metrics are. You can really feed in a lot of information using this upload functionality to make sure that you're targeting the right people, et cetera. All right, so you've got your business snapshot settings. You've also got some of your same LinkedIn settings that you're pretty used to, right? Setting up which account you want to use if you've got multiple accounts, daily action limits, if you want to exclude certain types of contacts. And then we talked about very briefly already, auto reply mode. Do you want it manual? Do you want it to be Copilot where it drafts, but you have to approve? Or do you want it to be fully autonomous where it's actually interacting with your leads for you? And then if you're planning on including email in your campaigns as well, same thing. You've got your email limits and what mailbox you want to use, all of that good stuff. So you come in here and you do all of your campaign setup, and then you're going to start adding in some capabilities. And just to start with, there are so many more capabilities here than there were in the old campaign builder. So purely from like an orchestration kind of a flow perspective, you've got conditions where you can check and see maybe what whether people are connected or not, whether you have their email address or not, whether a whole bunch of other things, right? Contact data, behaviors, if they responded or not. And then obviously you can build in delays just like you could in the previous campaign builder. You've also got a bunch more channel actions than you used to have. So, you saw before we had connection requests, visit profile, send a message, right? We've also got some new in-mail features based on whether or not you have credits available that you can use. Um, Obviously, you can still send an email if you've got the right type of subscription. You can also tag the contacts. You can choose whether you're moving them to or from a CRM integration. I mentioned, I think you can move them to another campaign. So if they get to a point where it really makes sense to go, okay, let's pull them out of this flow and put them into a different type of flow, that's pretty powerful. So you've got kind of different campaigns working together and feeding one another based on maybe what they're interested in. Maybe if they reply and they mention a particular one of your products, you move them into a campaign that is specific to that product, right? Or by the way, and I think this is one that I've seen recently that a lot of people aren't doing, and you could even do in our existing campaign builder as well, although you have to do it a little bit more manually, is if they've responded and they maybe book a demo with you, book an appointment with you, put them into a book an appointment flow where you're just following up and continuing to nurture that connection, right? Whether or not they actually show up for the meeting, whether or not you have any additional interactions with them, put them into something where they're getting some kind of follow up, some kind of a reminder that you're still around, right? I definitely think that's something valuable. Obviously, you can remove the connection if that becomes necessary or appropriate, withdraw the invites, unfollow them, invite them to follow your company. There are a whole lot of different activities available here. Inviting them to an event is a big deal. Sending them to an external URL via a webhook based on your workflows. So lots of options on the actual campaign activities front. And then the other thing, and I talked about this a little bit, but there are a couple of different types of AI agents, and there's still more to come. But one of them, the kind of most common one, is profile analysis and lead scoring agent. And this is actually really, really neat. I'm gonna pull it over here just so I can show for a minute. Um, Maybe you want to target technology and education companies, and that's what industry they're in. Is kind of a low priority. It doesn't matter so much, but location is US, and that matters a whole lot. I only serve companies in the US, maybe. And then company size. Maybe it's really important to me that I have only companies of this size. You can target specific job title, you can add custom criteria, and then the lead scoring agent literally goes and assigns a score for you so that you can make decisions based on that score of how to treat that lead, right? And so maybe you decide based on this that you only want to handle leads and actually do follow up with leads that are at least a score of 50 or a score of 80, right? That fit your target audience profile pretty closely. So you could do that. Or, for example, if you're a recruiting or hiring manager and you're looking at candidates and you want to find candidates that have the right criteria and you want to score them, excuse me, um, maybe you have a different workflow based on what their score was, right? Maybe the highest scoring candidates get invited to interview right away, whereas medium and low scoring candidates, they get invited to apply, but you're not ready to invite them to interview right away, right? And so you could handle them differently based on those scores. And for me, that's really powerful because again, lead scoring has been a huge part of my historical workflow. And this is something that I feel like a lot of our sales reps are having to do themselves manually right now is kind of think through how to score leads instead of just loading everything in and letting the system be smarter about how we should score those leads and handle those leads. All right, I'm gonna take a drink here because my throat is getting too dry, obviously. Thank you guys. I see some more questions coming in. Um, all right, the other one, the sentiment analysis agent. This one actually is looking at comments on posts that you're loading in and deciding whether it's a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment or kind of a neutral sentiment, right? Sometimes people just kind of give a thumbs up on a post, not actually react to the post, but like in the comments, just give a thumbs up. And maybe that's a pretty neutral. Reaction, whereas other people are criticizing the post and other people are really being positive and supportive on the post, right? And so maybe you want to handle those things differently. So the sentiment analysis agent is really interesting in terms of maybe sending out a different message based on how their sentiment was. So a practical application of that might be you made a post, it was really, really popular. It was kind of polarizing, right? Some people were super supportive, some people disagreed with whatever that, statement or thought leadership piece was that you published, and you want to do some follow-up specific to how they responded. All right, and then there will be competitive research agents and other things coming as well. And then this one is really exciting, but it's not going to be available right away in the beta, is data enrichment. For most of us, we're using other tools to enrich data. And so the idea that I can pull in some contacts from LinkedIn and then go and add their email data based on some enrichment is a really, really powerful thing. And then pulling in other company data as well. So super excited about these. Again, kind of trying to do everything all in one place rather than needing to bring together different tools. So what I see a lot is people maybe pull in contacts from LinkedIn, then they're having to like export them and use other tools to try and add that email. And by the way, manipulating all these lists, it's a pain in the butt, right? So we're trying to help you skip some of those steps. All right, so in this particular example for my campaign, again, it's a post campaign. My first step was just getting it to score what those leads look like so that I can decide what I want to do with those leads. So what I've done here is basically say that I only want to do follow up with anybody who has a lead score of at least 50. If they don't at least decently meet my ICP, then I just didn't do anything with them, right? They're outside of my industry, they're maybe outside the right job titles, etc. I just left them alone and didn't do anything with them. And then obviously I also want to check and see if I'm already connected to that person, because if I'm already connected, then maybe I'm just starting to send them messages and some email and some follow-ups rather than needing to go through the effort of getting connected. If they are connected to me, like I said, I do some follow up. If they are not connected, maybe I visit their profile and then send them a connection request. Maybe I wouldn't do that immediately. Maybe I do it a day later or a few hours later, right? Um, by the way, a personalized connection note, there are already ways to use AI and either generate a message, refine your message. This option allows you to write from their engagement. So, literally, to write a message based on how they engaged with that particular post, which is really powerful. And then, if you're not familiar already with the AI spin text writer, it allows you to create multiple variations of your messages and improve your messages as well. So, let's see. I'm just going to give an example here. Loved your comment on my recent post. And let's get it to generate something a little more formal. Um, you get the idea, and then you can refine it, you can change it, you can shorten it as you wish. See how that preview is in practice, respin it if you'd like to. Lots of options here in terms of drafting and getting the AI to assist you with that. As a reminder, we're not just on the connection side, we're also wanting to reinforce via email so that we've got multiple channels, right? Same thing, leverage the AI to help draft some of your emails. And then, maybe once they accept or don't accept, then you're handling them differently. Maybe once you get connected, you send it over to your CRM and make sure that that data appears in your CRM as well. And then maybe you send them to another campaign for existing leads that you're already connected with, right? If they don't connect, maybe you're sending up a couple of follow-ups and eventually maybe withdrawing that invitation. Um, this is all drag and drop. It allows you to kind of move everything around and add your steps as you go. I've tried to make it fairly neat, but I know it's super small on this screen, so I apologize. The But you get the idea. You end up really could have some campaigns that are very, very detailed, but really a more full-featured way of handling all of your campaigns or all of your outbound leads and making sure that they're followed up on appropriately based on their behaviors. So picking up on those buying signals as we've been talking about and making sure that you're being consistent in the outreach and that you're moving them through the flow and creating pipeline out of them in a repeatable way. I see that there are a few more questions coming in. I appreciate it. I'm going to swap back over. We've just got a couple more slides, and then we'll get to questions for you. All right, what this looks like in practice. So again, whether or not you ever use WeConnect or another LinkedIn automation tool, what does your kind of week in and week out SDR motion look like around buying signals on LinkedIn, right? How are you capturing some of those signal sources? How are you launching campaigns tied to some of those signals? And making sure that you've got a tailored multi-step outreach. That can all be done manually. Is it more work? Absolutely. Is it more man hours? Absolutely. But it can all be done very, very intentionally, and you can have assignments to different SDRs or different sales team members or different marketing team members, depending on your structure, so that you create a system that gives you predictable prospecting with maybe a little bit less manual research, right? You're moving away from this idea of like, let me load in a CSV list or let me pull up a LinkedIn search. We can still be doing those campaigns as well, but moving towards more of a signal-based effort so that you're meeting people at the time when they're actively engaging with the types of content or the types of information that are likely to lead to a sales process for you. All right. So if you go away with nothing else today, I'd like to encourage you to stop treating LinkedIn as it's an individual rep activity because it really, really isn't. And by the way, when we leave it to the individual reps, it's really inconsistent, and some reps are really great at it. Other reps are hit or miss at best. And I've literally been in situations where I had different reps using such extremely different messaging that it created problems later in the sales cycle, right? Because their messaging up front leads to expectations when they do come and buy, leads to problems for your implementation team on the back end if maybe their expectations were set very differently in the front, right? So as a sales or a marketing leader, we're needing to get our heads around what are they doing and is it consistent and what does the messaging look like is really, really important. I'd encourage you to move towards organizing your outreach around specific signals rather than just lists. And there's a couple reasons for this. I talk a lot about pain points. Obviously, for you to sell to someone, they have to have whatever pain that you can help solve, right? If I'm selling a washing machine, they have to have dirty laundry or they won't care. But they also have to have a trigger. I can have dirty laundry for a really long time, and I won't necessarily care about buying a washing machine until maybe my existing washing machine breaks. Now I've got a trigger and a reason to solve that problem, right? Or maybe I was washing my laundry by hand, and this is kind of stretching the analogy a little bit, but bear with me. Um, Washing my laundry by hand, and now I have children, so I don't have the time or energy to do that anymore. Now I've got to fix that problem. So it's not enough just to have the pain point. It's about having the trigger that makes you want to solve that particular pain point at that particular time. And so this is where signals come in and become a lot more important, right? Obviously, we think that you should use automation to maintain that consistent follow up. You can set yourself a million reminders to follow up, but you get distracted, you forget, blah, blah, blah. So the more you can automate, the better. And then build a repeatable system that the whole team can work with so that it's consistent wherever they're interacting with your team, right? It's not that they've got a great experience on LinkedIn for one lead with one team member and another lead is being completely neglected on LinkedIn. Make it repeatable. This is how we build revenue engines that scale really effectively, right? And become really, really predictable. So if you walk away with nothing else, I hope that that helps improve your LinkedIn outreach for the moment. Um, Obviously, I'm with WeConnect, so I'm biased, but I would remind you there are a ton of connections happening through WeConnect every single day. Last year, we helped our customers make almost 4 million new connections. Think about all of the possibilities, all of the potential there, and send 10.8 million messages, right? So lots of potential. I see people every day and talk to people every day who absolutely are still making LinkedIn work for them in amazing ways. I just think we have to be more innovative. We have to be smarter about how we're using LinkedIn. We can't just be spamming people with a bunch of messages. But if you're not being serious about how you're doing your outreach on LinkedIn, I'd encourage you to consider it. And of course, I want you to come and join the LinkedIn Lead Engine beta. The beta will be available towards the end of March. It'll be available this month. And I'll insert the standard disclaimer about this is a software company's forward-looking estimate. Obviously, that can change as it gets closer because sometimes life happens, but we believe it will be available in the second half of March. If you haven't previously taken a free trial of WeConnect, please come back and take a trial, or if you want to wait, sign up for the beta and then do your trial when the beta is available. So you can take advantage of the free trial and the beta at the same time. That's absolutely a possibility. And if you want more information, you can always book a demo with our team. We'd love to chat with you a little bit more about what's coming up and how to structure your campaigns for the best success. So with that, I will roll over and take a look at our questions here. And Archie and one of our sales team members, Hanise, are here to help me with questions because they have blessed me with their greater knowledge at the moment. All right, let's see. All right, so someone asked, how many users are using WeConnect? And of course, we won't share that. But the question really is, do we find that some of the same industries, such as BPO, are reaching out to the same potential people that, for example, responded to a thought leadership article? It's a great question. I will say being fairly active on LinkedIn up until recently. I never had someone reach out based on like a comment or liking a post or things like that. Most of what I got, and because I have a C-suite title, I got a lot of random outreach. Most of what I got was just kind of cold outreach. So I don't think a lot of people are doing it more based on intent signals yet. I'm sure that will change over time, but that's not what we're seeing a whole ton of at the moment. Yes, there will be a recording, by the way. Oh, and yes, this also, the LinkedIn lead engine will be available for our white label clients as well. All right. Can you flag specific profiles that you don't want any automated outreach to go to? Archie, maybe that's a good question for you.
Maybe I'll jump in.
Sure, go for it.
So, yeah, the answer is yes. You can flag people you don't want to reach out to. You have an option in WeConnect to blacklist individuals or even a company on a bulk who you don't want to reach out to via your WeConnect campaigns. Once blacklisted, you won't be reaching them via campaign or through any automation activities from WeConnect.
Perfect, thank you. Um, I've heard that LinkedIn is coming up with a new AI sales navigator. How does that affect this? I have not researched that personally, so I don't know, Anise or Archie, if you guys know any more about that one. That's not one I can address at the moment. I apologize.
Yeah, from what I've researched about it, it's gonna be more like on how you're gonna be getting your um contacts, searching them and getting more filters. But it doesn't really give you the ability to message them or put them into these processes that you're about to as Reconnect is offering. So they'll be kind of like upgrading their searches and filters, but not really on the messaging part of it or outreaching.
Got it. Thank you. All right. So someone is interested in building a campaign that targets a specific people with a specific work experience, say 8 years of work experience. Um, and then how can I target people who are active on LinkedIn for hiring? And can I make a campaign run faster? The ones I set have reached out to an average of 3 people in 3 days. I will say if it's only reaching 3 people in 3 days, it maybe is take a look at your warm-up settings and your daily limits, because that's not a whole lot. But we'd have to look at your campaign in specific to know more details. But Archie or Hennies, you probably have more detailed answers.
Yep, Marian and I were on a Zoom call last Friday. So I believe if she'll just reach out to me again, we can do another Zoom call so we can kind of like look at her campaigns and also those concerns that she bring out. I'll be more than willing to help her.
Awesome. Yeah, because all of that seems doable in terms of specific work experience. Absolutely. Um, All right, I've been posting a fair amount. I have a fair amount of followers and maybe 2,000 connections. On my post, I get very few comments and likes or reactions, but I appear to get a lot of impressions. Is there any way to track impressions, or is that LinkedIn's way of acting important? That's kind of awesome wording. Thank you for that. In terms of tracking it and pulling them into WeConnect, I'm not aware of one. They actually have to engage with your post, share, react, or comment for us to be able to target them. All right, perfect. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to drop them in. Aside from that, thank you for spending an hour with us today. Please go sign up for the beta. I'll put the link back up on the thing. You can also go to the website and find it. Um, sign up for the beta so that we can notify you. of when it is available, and you can go ahead and play around with it and really up level your own outreach. Again, if you haven't had a free trial yet, please do so. And if you have any additional questions, please drop them in and we'll follow up via email. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful Thursday, everyone. Thank you.